Okay, so learner name C, luckily all about conformity, so that should be theoretically easy to remember. Okay, so as long as we can remember one of the definitions for conformity, Crutchfield's yield to group pressure from 1955 is always a good one to go with because it's only 4 words long. All right, so if there's a question about what is conformity or understanding what conformity is, it's yielding to group pressure. The longer one, yeah, the change in belief in behaviour in response to real or imagined group pressure with no direct request to reply with the group, nor any reason to justify the behaviour change. You can break that down, all right, into the 4 sections that we did. All right, a change in belief or behaviour. People will change their behaviour or what they think because of the group pressure. The more pressure there is, the more likely they are to change. All right, and whether that be imagined pressure or real pressure, which we'll talk about when we look at the experiments, more pressure there is, more likely they are to change their behaviour. Less pressure, less likely. All right, no direct request to comply with the group. All right, so again, no real direct order being given to change the behaviour. It just comes from that group pressure. All right, and no reason to justify the behaviour change. If we think to the Ash experiment, which we'll talk about, there's no reason why people would think that one line is longer than the other. As long as you can remember, changes in belief or behaviour and remember that group pressure, then we should be okay. So, why is it important, that we comply? So following requests from, members of authority. Yeah, we're not really in obedience levels here. We're just being, asked to do some things and some requests to do. So it could be things that then become normal over time. So it might be, that we start college, our lessons start 8:30, but we kind of say, can you come in about 8:20 so that we're ready to start at 8:30. If we look at other corridors and stuff like that, we can see that lots of other areas are not ready to start at 8:30. You wander down the corridor. Well, you wouldn't be wandering down the corridors at 8:30 because clearly you'd be in my lesson. But if you were wandering down the corridors at 8:30, you would see lots and lots of other courses where lessons haven't started yet. But with us, I say to you, come in a little bit before, sit down, get yourself ready and start. And now those things for us have become normal. All right. Again, these things we can see, and groups can form these levels of conformity as they go along, which helps to strengthen the bond between them. Then we talked about the social norms, all right, Deutsch and Gerard's social norms, all right, informational social influence. So remember, that links into the jar. If you haven't got the information around you to understand what you need to do, then you are going to look to other people to shape your behaviour. All right, so think about information, you don't have it. Social is other people, so you look to them to influence your behaviour. Okay, if you do have all of the information, then there is no need for you to comply with the rest of the group unless you really want to. Okay, so for example, in September time, there are possibly going to be a couple of level 2s that might have progressed. They are going to know, well, they're probably forgotten, but they should know that they're going to need to be in their lines at 9 o'clock. All right, and everybody else around them is not going to be doing that. So they've got the choice whether to, comply with the group and, or conform with the group and just stand there and wait for me to emerge from the dark, or whether to stand in their line because they are going to have the information. Yeah, other examples that we talked about was IKEA. All right, if you know what you're doing, then there's no need to follow the rest of the group. All right, so informational social influence. When we do not know how to behave, we copy other people. The other one we had was normative social influence. All right, the normal behaviour of the group pushing you towards changing your belief in your behaviour. So if everybody in the group that you are in is doing something, then you might feel the pressure to change your behaviour in order to fit in with that group. All right, again, we talked about fashions. We could talk about, watching television programs. We could talk about gaming. We could talk about, being on TikTok. All manner of things that people do in order to fit into a group, and then the normal behaviour of that group. It can be a very powerful motivator if we've got a group of highly disciplined individuals and we've got someone that's not very disciplined, then we could put them within that group and hope that the group pressure of the people that are good could influence the behaviour and the belief of the person that's not so good in order for them to fit in. All right, so although sometimes we talk about it and laugh and joke about it, about people not being individual, we can use it in a very powerful way. And one of the other ways that things that will affect levels of conformity is going to be your self-esteem, all right? How you feel. What is your need for acceptance? If you've got a high need for acceptance, then you might well, you know, conform to a group. If you've got a high need for acceptance, that might well come from levels of low self-esteem. If you don't think that you are worth anything, if you've got levels of low self-esteem, and there's a group out there who will say, yeah, come and join our group, we think you're great, but you might just need to change this, this or this, either directly or indirectly, then you might well do it. We had lots of discussions about radicalisation and how people, when they are trying to radicalise people or groom people, generally go for people with low self-esteem because they are more likely to then conform. If you've got someone with high self-esteem, it's very, very difficult to radicalise or groom that particular person. All right, and then we had our 4 levels of conformity, which I'll leave on the screen for a second to see if you can remember what they are. Okay, so at the bottom end, we've got compliance. All right, so basically just kind of almost doing what you're told if someone asks you to do it. All right, then we've got identification, feeling that you should act in a particular way because you are a certain thing. So if you feel you're a police officer, you might act in a particular way, even if you don't believe that's how you should act. Or you might change how you act in order to fit into a particular situation, even if you don't feel that that is the right way. Then we have the wonderful one to spell and to say, the ingratiation. You change your belief or your behaviour in order to make yourself more favourable to fitting in with the group. And then right at the top end, we've got the internalisation. Yeah, you fully believe the things that you are being pressurised into doing, and you do them without necessarily thinking about them. So why is conformity important in the public services? Well, you know, we've got our uniforms that show conformity. We are all part of one thing. We all want to belong to one thing, which also then shows pride and authority. We had a long discussion about how imitating a police officer is not a good thing, and it's an offence to impersonate a police officer because of the authority that it can convey. All right. So we wear uniforms. We wear our uniforms on Monday. All right. On Mondays we wear black, in order to show our conformity, that we want to be part of something and show our pride towards that. All right. Also, we might want acceptance from our colleagues. All right. We want to be part of a group. Therefore, we change our belief and our behaviour in order to fit into that group, even if we didn't necessarily want to in the first place. All right. Whether that be our colleagues, whether that be our peers, whether that be our equals, whether that be other people, we are going to change our belief or our behaviour in order to fit in with that particular group or the idea of what that group is about. And the last thing we talked about was in-group and out-group favouritism. Yeah, lots of studies have shown that if you are in a group, then people in the same group will most likely treat you favourably. All right. You can look it up if you haven't done so already. There are some studies to do with children and things like that. Very eye-opening. If you're not in that group, then you might get treated less favourably. Is it right? Possibly not. Does it happen? Yes. So we need to be aware that if we're in a group, then we might get treated more favourably. How do we get into that group, or how do people get into that group? By conforming to the normal behaviour of that group. Okay, so conformity, yielding to group pressure. All right. How can we increase or decrease levels of conformity? You know, informational social influence, normative social influence, and self-esteem.